All right, let's dive right in. We're going deep inside the mind of one of the most famous, unreliable narratives ever created. We're going to deconstruct the psychological gears that just completely grind him down. Yep, we're mapping out the anatomy of a confession in Edgar Allan Poe's absolute masterpiece, The Telltale Heart. And right from the jump, from the very first line, the narrator throws this question at us. It's a dare, a challenge. He's practically pleading, I'm not mad. And believe me, he's going to spend the entire story trying to prove it. But that one question, it just hangs over everything, doesn't it? It frames this whole tale as this desperate, totally paradoxical defense of his own sanity. So, that brings us to our first section, a perfectly rational madness. And this really gets to the heart of the story's main conflict, right? It's this razor-thin line our narrator is walking between being this methodical, calculating person and just completely collapsing psychologically. It's like he's putting on a performance of being sane, and we've got front row seats. I mean, check this out. There is this huge gap between what the narrator says he is and what he actually does. He goes on and on, bragging about how careful he was, his caution, his precision, and yeah, he sounds perfectly logical. But then you look at his motive, and it's completely, utterly irrational. He wants to kill an old man he says he loves, all because of his creepy vulture-like eye. That right there, that's the core tension of the whole story. A perfectly coherent voice narrating a mind that is just profoundly unhinged. So, what are we really dealing with here? Is he psychotic? Is he obsessive? Or is he just trapped in some kind of waking nightmare? The thing is, Poe never gives us a clear answer, no easy diagnosis. And that ambiguity, well, that's exactly what makes this story so terrifying, right? We're trapped in this mystery with him, and we're forced to wonder what is really going on inside his head. Okay, so this massive internal conflict, it all plays out through two really powerful symbols. This isn't just a story about some guy, It's really a symbolic war raging inside of him, a battle between two opposing forces. The eye versus the heart. So on one side, you've got the eye. Think of it as pure, cold, clinical observation. It's the thing he's obsessed with, a symbol of some kind of judgment that he just can't stand. And then on the other side, you have the heart. That's the raw, uncontrollable engine of emotion, of passion, and, as we'll see, of guilt. See, he thinks he can get rid of the eye with pure logic, but he has absolutely no clue what he's going to do about the heart. And get this, the lantern he uses? It's not just a lamp to see in the dark. No, it's basically a tool he uses to control his obsession. It's like a mechanical version of his own watchful eye, focusing all of his fixation down to one single terrifying ray of light. You could almost say it's his logic weaponized. All right, next up, countdown in a closed room. Because it's not just what our narrator does that's so important, it's where it all happens. The setting and the pacing here, they're not just background details. They basically become active characters in his breakdown, cranking up the tension to an almost unbearable level. Think about it. The house is basically a prison. The narrator, he never leaves. The entire story is confined to just a few rooms. And this physical claustrophobia, this feeling of being boxed in, is a perfect metaphor for his mental state. He is trapped inside his own head, and there is absolutely no escape from his own suffocating thoughts. And then, Poe drops in this detail about a mechanical obsession with time. He brings up the death watch beetle. Now, back in the day, the ticking sound this insect makes was seen as a superstition, an omen of death. But for our narrator, oh, this is no superstition. For him, it's a real, literal ticking clock, counting down every single second to the murder he's planning so carefully. And this whole thing becomes a ritual, right? For 7 straight nights, he repeats the exact same meticulous process. He turns stalking into this precise, obsessive ceremony. It's this incredibly slow, deliberate buildup of tension, which all comes to a head on the 8th night. That's when fate steps in. The eyes open, and the countdown is over. So, the deed is done, the eye is gone. But now, of course, the narrator has to deal with the consequences. This next part is all about his attempt to hide not just the body, but the very memory of what he did. It's about burying the unbearable. So what does he do? He dismembers the body and hides it under the floorboards. But you gotta understand, this isn't just a practical move to hide the evidence. No, it's a really powerful psychological act. He truly believes that by physically burying the body, he can bury his conscience right along with it. Out of sight, out of mind. Or so he thinks. And then it starts. A sound. A low, dull, quick sound. What is it? It's his subconscious. It's the guilt he thought he had buried, now literally leaking back into reality. And it's about to completely betray that calm, confident facade he's been trying so hard to maintain. And that brings us to the final frantic moments of the story. The sound of guilt. The police are at the door, and the narrator's carefully constructed sanity, it's about to be demolished from the inside out by a sound that only he can hear. I mean, he's so confident at first, right? He's practically glowing with arrogance, sitting in a chair right on top of the buried corpse. But then, he starts to feel pale. He suddenly just wants the officers to leave. A ringing starts in his ears, and he asks himself the one question that is going to lead to his complete downfall. What is that sound? He thinks it's the old man's heart, but is it? It's really the sound of his own heart, just pounding with a guilt so powerful, it's become something he can hear out loud. It starts to grow. He tries talking more loudly to cover it up, but it's no use. He starts pacing the floor. He's raving. He's swearing. He even drags his chair across the floorboards, just desperate to make any other noise to drown it out. But the sound of guilt? It's relentless. It just cuts through everything. And it just keeps getting louder, reaching a fever pitch. It's not a beat anymore. It's a shriek, an unbearable roar that he is absolutely convinced the police must be able to hear. In his mind, they know, and they're mocking his horror. And the internal pressure, it just becomes too much to contain. And boom, everything just collapses. The police showing up, that was the external pressure he couldn't handle. It forced his internal conflict right out into the open. That rhythmic beat of his own guilt turns into an unbearable shriek, and his whole facade of sanity just shatters into a million pieces. The confession, in the end, isn't just him admitting what he did. It's an escape. It's the only way he can think of to finally stop the noise inside his own head. So why does a story from way back in 1843 still feel so chilling and so modern? Well, it's because Poe did something brilliant. He changed the location of horror. He took it out of the crumbling castles and the misty graveyards, and he put it somewhere way more intimate and way more inescapable, right inside the fractured, dark corridors of the human mind. In the end, what Poe shows us is that the most terrifying prison isn't some dungeon with stone walls and iron bars. It's our own mind, our own thoughts, our own regrets. The narrator could not escape the beating of that telltale heart, and that leaves all of us with a final, kind of lingering question, doesn't it? How loud does our own conscience have to get before we're finally forced to listen?